What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Champion Living Podcast, the only podcast crossing the lines between the sport of rodeo and fitness. Today's episode, we are with the CEO, Director of Education and Training at the Oxygen Advantage Clinic, and also best-selling author of books like The Oxygen Advantage, Patrick McKeown. We're jumping into it right now. Patrick, thank you so much for being here today, man. We really appreciate it.
No, it's great. Thanks very much, Doug, for the invitation.
Absolutely. We've been talking about breath work. I really kind of dove into this after reading a book called Breathe about last year sometime. We were just talking about the author's name, and now I can't remember it. I'm drawing a blank. But
James Nestor.
Yes, James Nestor. And it was eye-opening, man. It really has changed how I live, essentially. And so when we had the opportunity to have you on the show, man, we were all so fired up to kind of hear your input, hear about how you got into, this, and it's unique. It's breathwork is not like a standard operation by most people in the world. And I think it's due to the fact that we talked about this yesterday, but when things are free, even if they're super duper effective, people pass over them. They don't do them as often because I think they're quote unquote too easy. So breath work has been something that I've been doing every day, mostly when I'm going to bed or feeling stressed out, but has helped me out a ton, man. So we're really excited to have you on. Do you want to just kind of give us a little intro, fill us in on who you are, let our listeners get to know you for a second and how you became such a world-renowned breathwork coach?
Yeah, thanks, Doug. I came into breathing because of my own issues. This wouldn't have been a career that you would choose, put it this way. If you were wanting to survive financially, the last thing I would say, well, especially back then. So I started to be teaching breathing exercise back in 2002. I came across it in 1998 because I had chronic asthma. And with that, you typically have a stuffy nose. And if you have a stuffy nose, your sleep is impacted. Your concentration is impacted. You're a chronic mouth breather. It impacts your dental health. It's more likely to put you into that increased stress response. I also would say that it increases rumination of the mind and a lot of thought activity. And there's an interesting connection there. So I was lucky enough, I came across and, simple breathing techniques that I incorporated into my own way of life. And I started teaching, then I changed careers. I started teaching in 2002. I wrote my first book in 2003, and the book was called Close Your Mouth, and that started it all.
That's so cool. Speaking of books, best-selling author, you've written, I can't even count, I think saw 4 or 5 titles on there that have been on the best-selling list, and I recently just started Oxygen Advantage. I've got about halfway through that. Man, has been an incredible book to read and just blows my mind. Literally every chapter, I'm like, holy crap, like this is insane what the impact that your breathing has on you, and that we really don't pay any attention to it. We just think this is all normal. And what do you enjoy writing more than you enjoy the coaching aspect of what you do, or is it a like full fold enjoy it all?
I think the work itself, I was just lucky enough, I'm in total alignment with what I do. I love the work. I always have, and it would be tremendous if more people were able to find an occupation that absolutely suits them. And it's amazing how things worked out, in terms of, because very often we don't typically go into careers because we're weighing it up too much. And I suppose I had a good instinct. I just felt it was the right thing to do about 25 years ago. And I just went with that. And I think you're more open to your gut and the communication that's coming from the gut when, for example, your mind isn't racing so much. And prior to that, my mind would always have been racing. I didn't have panic disorder or anything like that, but, I was always stuck in my head, put it that way. And as many people are. So do I like writing the books? I have to say, I wrote a recent book. It was 190,000 words called Breathing for Yoga. And I swore after it I would never write a book again. So anyway, 2 weeks later, I just started again. So I don't know. Yeah. So maybe it's the human, just one project after another that we never seem to stop doing projects.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I think we're all programmed the same exact way. And in the beginning of this, you said, I didn't get into this to get rich. It was a more of a love effort at first. You found this thing that really helped you, and you thought there must be other people in the world that need help with this. And all of a sudden, because of your love for what you do and your care for people, you have all of these best-selling books. You have an incredible training and education program called Oxygen Advantage. um, it's awesome, man. It's super cool. What is Oxygen, like the in-person facility you have for Oxygen Advantage? What happens there? Because if I'm mistaken or not mistaken, you're kind of combining how to increase your performance, maybe it's athletically or just as a human in everyday life, in combination with how you breathe.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a story to it. Like, I'll kind of give you the backdrop. I was working specifically with asthma and people with sleep issues and people with anxiety and panic disorder. And I was working with children and teenagers, teaching them optimal breathing patterns, how to improve their blood circulation, oxygen delivery, opening up the nose. And I was giving these courses in Ireland in 2010 to 2013. Financially, Ireland was a basket case. The banks had totally messed up. People's houses had devalued by 50%. And of course, this was common throughout the Western world. And there was a lot of angst out there. And I was giving small courses, and 3,000 people attended these courses over 3 years. And 95% of the people who attended were female. And here I'm thinking to myself, where is the Irish man? How come he's not turning up for a breathing course?
Mm-hmm.
So then I created from scratch then Oxygen Advantage. And that's when I started writing that book, because I wanted to bring together breathing in a high performance setting. The man is not going to, at least he wasn't going to back then 10 years ago. If you put anxiety in the title, he was gone. He
Yeah.
ran a mile away. But if you put in performance, mental and physical performance, and if you give him exercises to turn him blue, he would come, in terms of he would want to know more. So the whole thing it was really about creating a package and a presentation whereby we could bring in the tools to help to give some degree of control over the mind. Because even though our objective was to improve concentration and attention span, those same very tools are also going to lead to less angst, because
Mm-hmm.
a racing mind is the biggest problem. And it's not just about mental performance, there's huge physical performance here. So there's two aspects to it. It's improving your everyday breathing patterns to reduce breathlessness during physical exercise. So it's really about training the body to do more with less. And it's understanding what drives your breathing. Like, the primary stimulus to breathe is the gas carbon dioxide. So, and some people are overly sensitive to it, even athletes. Athletic training doesn't improve your breathing patterns. So unless you swim, but your typical athletic training exercise, it doesn't improve your breathing, but you can bring breathing exercises into your athletic training to add an extra load to train the body to do the same intensity physical exercise with less ventilation. That's one side of it. The other side of it, of course, then is doing breath holds on an exhalation. And we've been practicing these for 20 years. People do high intensity interval training and they sprint to stimulate anaerobic glycolysis. This can be traumatic and it can increase the risk of injury. And if you sprint with your mouth open, your blood oxygen saturation will drop down to about 93%. You can measure this very easily with pulse oximeter. If you sprint with your mouth closed, it's very taxing, but it will further drop your blood oxygen saturation, but it's pretty tough to do. Now, you could sprint with a breath hold and you will lower your blood oxygen saturation down to 85%, which is severe hypoxia. You will increase carbon dioxide in the blood to plus 50 millimeters of mercury. Now, that's a whole different ball game. So if you even do a fast run, it would be better to do a sprint on a breath hold. And I'm not talking about hyperventilation beforehand, because you don't want to hyperventilate before holding your breath, because then you will hold your breath for longer because you've washed off carbon dioxide. And if you hold your breath for too long, your blood oxygen saturation will drop to below 60% to the point that you pass out. So we don't want passing out. What we want is normal breathing, and we want breath holding superimposed during physical training, and this adds an extra load. And I think there's a physical load, but there's also a psychological load. Suffocation is not nice. So now, Doug, coming back to why was the oxygen advantage? It was traditionally, and the initial idea was for men, but now it's 50-50, male, female. And it also brings in recovery. It brings in sleep. It brings in respiratory care, dealing with stress. And it's pretty cool, in terms of the people who are using it. We have athletes, of course, but we also have military. I've worked with snipers. I've been brought in to work with snipers, how to breathe while pulling the trigger of a gun. Because breathing for years and decades was this thing done completely left of field, that you had to have robes hanging out of you and beads, and you had to be wearing these open sandals, leather sandals and things like that. And, this is the idea. But the problem with that is that while the people who initially got very much into breathing, of course, they're left of field, because those are the ones who are going to try something different, even though breathing has been around for thousands of years. However, the idea about breathing changed in 1880, and we need to talk about that, because so my point here is we need to make breathing accessible in other words, in terms of the communication with which we get out there, but also that people understand that there's something in this for them.
Man, that is so important and such a cool thing to hear about. The techniques that you guys are using, it's so exciting to me to hear about the variety of people that are seeing the benefits. This isn't just for one type of person. This is for anybody, no matter what your goals may be. You talk about training snipers and these athletes essentially that are in high intensity situations that need to control themselves, and they're doing this with their breathing. Well, we train, I'm sure you've done a little research, but we train rodeo athletes. The only thing I can think of that's more intense than that is probably being a sniper. So I think athletes, in the rodeo world could definitely benefit from breathing. And I firsthand have had experience with that. I rode bucking horses for 12 years, had a career ending injury, decided to come back 7 years later after a spine fusion. And man, the first time I got on and was preparing to get on, I could just think about getting on and I would start hyperventilating almost. My heart rate would increase. I could sense like the losing the air. I couldn't get a controlled breath. And that's when I really realized that I've got to get a control of this. And so I did my own research and kind of looked into, methods. And, you said this has been around, it's been around for centuries. This has been around, they've used this as medicine since almost the beginning of time. And so I really started focusing on that. And so I did about 6 weeks of practice of some breathing techniques after I'd trained, before I went to bed, when I got up in the morning, and I got to go get on my first bucking horse. And it was, man, the experience was crazy for me because I'd never been there before. I'd never been so calm. I'd never seen everything so clear, because usually I was so worked up that I couldn't even think. So to hear about what breathing has done for all of these people, including guys that are in intense situations such as snipers, man, rodeo athletes need to definitely be listening up to this, because this is something that is like the golden ticket. And we got a good buddy who's, man, he's probably a 7-time world champion now in the bareback riding. Every time he gets on a bucking horse, within, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes before they get on, you can find him in the corner of the locker room, eyes closed, controlled breathing, visualizing everything that's going to happen. And he's the only one doing that. And he's been the only one that has set these levels of success in rodeo. He has been a huge pioneer in the sport and the event that I especially love so much. So it's really interesting to hear what are some common misconceptions you hear from the majority of people that they don't, about breathing. And then what are a couple things that you would just, for the average person, start with, and implementing, paying attention to see if you need breathing exercises, what does someone do to breathe better?
I think the biggest misconception is that the more air you breathe, the more oxygen that's delivered throughout the body. And that's an absolute no-no. Because when somebody has that idea, they can deliberately breathe more air in the belief that it's improving body oxygenation. Whereas the problem with breathing too much air is that you get rid of too much carbon dioxide. And it's the loss of carbon dioxide, too much of it, from the lungs and blood, which causes blood vessels to constrict and also for less oxygen to be delivered. I think we kind of all know this, Doug and Paul, intuitively. Many of us have tried taking 5 or 6 big full breaths in an effort to calm down. And all it has left us with that we feel a bit lightheaded and dizzy. Now, despite that, that idea is still pervasive out there. Like you talk about an individual who is preparing for competition, and we say they're going out into, it's a tough environment where they're going out into. There will be a natural acceleration in the heart rate depending on their state of mind. And if the heart rate goes too high, the brain is determining and recognizing that this individual is under threat, and the brain is here to protect them, and the brain will launch them into a fight or flight response. So you can imagine an individual getting on a horse. Their body is getting up on the horse, but their brain is telling them to get the hell out of this situation as quick as possible.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. And I thought it was really cool with the individual you were talking about that was sitting down, because we use this as a pre-competition preparation. And because I think it's very important to conserve energy for the rodeo, conserve energy for the competition. We only have so much energy. Whereas a lot of individuals will be walking around, they will be talking. That is a waste of energy. Sit in a corner, talk to nobody, bring your attention inwards. I typically will do it that I close my eyes, I bring my attention inwards, but I shift attention from the front part of the brain towards the center at the back of the brain, which helps to quieten the thinking mind. I bring my attention onto the breath. I take a soft breath in through my nose and a really relaxed and slow, gentle breath out. Because when I take a soft breath in through my nose and a really slow and relaxed and gentle breath out, I bring down my heart rate. I stimulate the vagus nerve. It secretes a neurotransmitter, which will bring down your heart rate. You're in a state of rest and digest. You're in a state of relaxation. You're in a state of conservation of energy. You don't want to go out into the rodeo feeling too relaxed. So what we do then is we do a few breath holds to improve blood flow to the brain. And we do it as part of a warm-up routine. So your individuals are going to be warming up for maybe 20 minutes or half an hour. Bring functional breathing into the warm-up to change. It's not just a warm-up for the muscles. We should also be using warm-up to help open up the airways, increase blood flow to the brain. It's mental preparation as well as physical. How many times has an individual's mind sabotaged their performance? They are overthinking. There's no time for thinking when you're on a horse. You have to get the critical mind. And I don't know anything about rodeo. I've been to one or
you're
two
right
when I
on.
was in Texas there 10, 15 years ago. But I think the same endeavor, regardless of whatever activity that you're partaking in, you need to have your full attention on doing what you're doing. You don't want to be living stuck in your head. You don't want to be overthinking. You don't want to be tired. You want to be absolutely that your attention is moving simultaneously with time. The critical mind is out of the way. And all of that memory that you have stored from the years and years of training, that once you get the mind out of the way, that training comes into being. And this is a state of flow, and that can be replicated. And, in order to access this state, it's very, very important that our physiology isn't in too much of a stress response, and also that our sleep is good the night before. And it does come back to that individual who is sitting down, is focusing on his breathing for 15 minutes. I'm not sure what he's doing, but he knows that there is something in that.
Yep, he absolutely does.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear you say that, because I've experimented a lot with this, but most of it came from just anecdotal information, and I'd seen benefits. I'd experienced flow state before, but I was always trying to figure out how to access it on demand, and I don't know if I ever quite figured that out, but uh, a lot of what you said was a lot of the things that I would practice. And so I've passed some of that information on to others, and it's just good to hear that I was at least somewhat on the right track with it. But something that you said, like, you echoed the quieting the mind, quieting the breath, conserving energy beforehand, but then you mentioned something about breath holds. So where would like breath holds come into play in part of a warm up for competition?
So say, for example, you're going through your normal routine. I'll make it very, very easy. I'll say an individual is doing very light movement for 20 minutes or so. Part of that is jogging. We'll say they are jogging. The first 10 minutes or so, I will have them jogging, breathing in and out through the nose. Now, it can be any movement, but in this instance, I'll just use the example of jogging. They are breathing in and out through the nose, but I also need them to breathe slow and low. And the reason being is because the diaphragm breathing muscle isn't just for respiration, but it provides stabilization for the spine. Now, when your mouth is closed, your tongue is resting in the roof of the mouth, and it's the correct resting posture of the tongue that will improve your balance. Your tongue is there to stabilize the head, the neck, and also with nasal breathing, you have the diaphragm. So what happens there is with good functional breathing, it increases what's called the zone of apposition. But basically, in terms of breathing, when we draw air into the lungs, there's a negative pressure in the chest and there's a positive pressure in the abdomen. And this is the generation of intra-abdominal pressure, which is providing stabilization for the spine. So you can imagine lifting a weight. You're just about to lift a weight. What do people normally do? They often do is they breathe in and they hold their breath just for a brief period of time. Because as they breathe in, the diaphragm is moving downwards. The abdomen then becomes like a pneumatic balloon, which is providing stabilization. So, Paul, coming back to your question, 10 minutes is breathing in and out through the nose. But I also want people to be conscious of breathing slow and breathing low with lateral expansion and contraction of the lower ribs. Now, this is also in terms of the mind because the diaphragm breathing muscle too is connected with the brain. So with this, we're helping to improve what's called alveolar ventilation. We're improving gas exchange from the lungs into the blood. And also with nasal breathing during exercise, during warm-up, it increases carbon dioxide in the blood, which in turn causes more oxygen to be released from the blood to the working muscles. So that's the initial 10 minutes. I don't want individuals going out too relaxed. Now I want to stress them a bit. I have them, as they're doing their movement, to breathe in and out through their nose and hold their nose or just hold their breath for about 10 or 15 paces. This is going to help open up their nose. They will feel it. This is going to help open up their lungs. But this also causes a spleen contraction. Now, maybe 10 or 15 seconds won't do it. They would have to hold their breath for 30 seconds. But the spleen is our reservoir of blood. It's our blood bank. It contains about 8% of our red blood cells. If we do a breath hold, and especially when we do 5 of them prior to competition, the spleen is releasing red blood cells into circulation, which have oxygen carrying capabilities. So that's another aspect of what we're doing. And the other thing about breath holding is that when you hold your breath, as we described there, and carbon dioxide is increasing in the blood, this increases blood flow to the brain. So we know for every 1 millimeter increase of CO2, it improves blood flow to the brain by about 3 to 4%. If you do a breath hold, you will increase CO2 in the blood by up to about 10 or even plus 10 millimeters of mercury. We can increase blood flow to the brain by 30% plus by doing breath holds.
Wow.
The other thing about this is that when you do a breath hold, the critical mind stops thinking. And the other thing about increasing CO2 and blood flow to the brain, it quietens what's called neuronal excitability. So the brain, by controlling breathing, regulates its own excitability. And this is coming back to the individual who may be just feeling a little bit off mentally. You know, we have to think about the warm-up. The warm-up takes place the night before. How many individuals, they have some degree of nerves because of the event that's happening the next day, which in turn messes up their sleep quality. Now they're waking up feeling pretty tired. They've lost. The warm-up is starting. The warm-up is starting in the weeks coming up to an event, but it also starts the night before. We need to get good sleep quality. If we need to have focus of the mind, we need to have functional breathing, optimal breathing patterns, and good quality sleep.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, that's absolutely game changer right there. Speaking of sleep, so I'm sure you've seen hostage tape around. It's pretty popular and become popular over the last year. Taping my mouth shut while I sleep to train my body to breathe through my nose because I used to breathe through my mouth when I slept all the time. Wouldn't snore so much, just wake up really dry mouth, feeling tired, a little fatigued, even if I got 8 hours. And now I feel like I'll tape my mouth shut. And I've been doing this very consistently for almost a year now. um, Man, I'll wake up before my alarm and feel more rested with less hours of sleep than I would have if I had slept for 8 hours and hadn't taped my mouth shut. And I notice drastic differences if I forget one night, or like I go hunting a lot. So I've been out in the woods. I didn't tape my mouth shut every night out there. One night it was so cold the tape wouldn't even stick to my face. So I had no option there. But man, I've seen a huge improvement in just my quality of life. My cognitive ability, especially in the mornings, has changed a lot. Is that could be a part of, when I think about it, like you're talking about the first step is the night before. Would that be like a good idea for an athlete that is maybe notices they have, a little grogginess when they're waking up, they're breathing heavily through their mouth, they're snoring? What do you think about mouth tape?
We have been mouth taping since 1998. When I wrote the book in 2003 called Close Your Mouth. And it's funny, I just did an Instagram because something struck me. It was a Premiership footballer talking about mouth taping. And I'm just thinking, it's wonderful to see this gone viral.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to put out some credit that there were only a few of us talking about this back 20 years ago. And what I did for the Instagram post was I opened up the book Close Your Mouth and I referred to the piece in the book that was written back in 2003 about the importance of nose breathing. Now, Paul, you talked about anecdotal evidence. It was anecdotal evidence up until fairly recently too about taping the mouth. However, we knew it worked. The science hasn't still caught on. Now, I have a tape that is specific. If you don't mind if I plug it.
No, go for it.
And the only reason being is because I brought out this a few years ago. This is called MyoTape. Now, this one here is specifically for beards. As you can see, I'm wearing a beard. And the tape surrounds the mouth and pulls the lips together. It's elasticated. But it would allow then somebody, say for example, if somebody has severe sleep apnea, they can't tape across the lips, because what happens is if they tape across the lips and they mouth puff, it will increase their sleep apnea severity. So even though we were taping across the lips for 20 years, we had to design something that enabled to get the mouth closed, but without actually covering the lips. And especially for children as well, for people with anxiety. So, Doug, listen, I think nose breathing during sleep is absolutely vital. Not everybody needs to wear tape. If you wake up with a dry mouth in the morning, you definitely need, like, dry mouth in the morning is a pretty good indicator that you're mouth breathing during sleep. And so many things are happening if your mouth is open during sleep. Your tongue is not able to rest in the roof of the mouth. It's more likely to encroach the airway. Your mandible, the lower jaw, is falling back into the throat, so it's narrowing the airway even further, which is increasing resistance to breathing. This can make you susceptible then to having events during your sleep, such as stopping of the breath, which is pretty common. It affects 25 to 50% of men.
Wow.
And of course, it gets worse as we get older. It puts a tremendous stress on the heart. It affects cognition, as you were talking about. But I think for the normal person, if you have poor sleep quality, and this is including snoring, you don't wake up feeling rested. We should have deep sleep, or at least 25% of our total sleep time should be N3, slow wave sleep. And getting the mouth closed with the tongue on the roof of the mouth is huge with that. And yes, this is part of training for athletes, because I know, I don't want that athlete's mind wandering during the event. And I need to have them absolutely rock solid in terms of the degree of alertness that they have, that they're fully there, that they're ready to go through a brick wall. That's the way you want to have them so focused. And sleep is huge there. Sleep is massive.
Absolutely. We talk about training as a puzzle, right? And all of these things are pieces of the puzzle. And if you're missing a piece of the puzzle, it doesn't look great. It looks pretty good, but you're still missing that one piece. So we talk about, obviously, physical training, strength and resistance training, nutrition. We talk about sleep recovery, talk about mental preparedness. I think this ties into mental preparedness, visualization, into that category fairly well. And if you are again, doing all of these things, man, your outcome and your success in whatever you're doing is probably going to be a lot higher, whether it's sports, whether it's being an entrepreneur, or just want to be the best mom or dad that you can. These are things that can help you be the best human that you can be. You talked a little bit earlier about breathing too much. What would be a sign that somebody could realize that they are over consuming oxygen? Which, again, I don't think that is a common thing that people understand, that you can be breathing too much.
Yeah, there's a very simple, just before I talk about that, I'm only thinking about you're getting up on horses. I'm assuming that your horses aren't mouth breathers, because if they were mouth breathers, you wouldn't be getting up on them. So
Yeah.
I think it would be very, very good for when you're riding horses is even checking in on how the horse is breathing. And
Mm-hmm.
the one thing about a horse is horses pick up on the breathing of their riders as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're very intuitive,
Yes.
horses are. Um, so the horse will be breathing in and out through its nose, and it will be primarily driven by the diaphragm. And breathing of a healthy horse is going to be effortless. And they have a ventilation that will match their metabolic needs. So the horse,
Mm-hmm.
under normal circumstances, will be breathing a volume of air that matches what they need. Now, humans are a bit different because our breathing is very susceptible to change in terms of stressors. So stress could be a psychological stress. Um, excessive talking makes us tired. The food that we eat can affect our breathing. Lack of physical exercise, sedentary lifestyles, genetic predisposition. There's a few different things. The easiest way to determine if your breathing is up to par or not is to do what we call the body oxygen level test. It's called BOLT, BOLT. You'll find it on YouTube. Simply, you're sitting down for about 5 minutes or so. Take a normal breath in through your nose and a normal breath out through your nose. Pinch your nose and hold your nose and time it in seconds. How long does it take until you feel the first definite desire to breathe? And when you let go, your breathing should be fairly normal. That score should be a minimum of 25 seconds. Now, you will be surprised that some athletes will have 13 and 14 seconds. And I would have to put the question to you. Physical movement and the ability of the athlete to move while riding a horse will influence their degree of balance.
Mm-hmm.
But functional breathing feeds into functional movement. If you have an athlete or an individual with a BOLT score of less than 25 seconds, that indicates dysfunctional breathing, and dysfunctional breathing contributes to dysfunctional movement. So when we think about the core, we're not just thinking about the abs, we're thinking about the diaphragm at the top, the pelvic floor. You've got the abs to the front, you've got the muscles to the back. It's a box. And this is about stabilization. And this is where breathing and movement go together. So that BOLT score has been studied. Professor Kyle Kiesel from Evansville University did a test of 51 individuals, and his conclusion was, if you're comfortable breath hold time, as I described, you take a normal breath in and out through your nose, you pinch your nose, you hold your nose, you time it in seconds until you feel the first definite desire to breathe or the first involuntary contractions of the diaphragm. When you let go, your breathing should be normal. His conclusion was, if your breath hold time is greater than 25 seconds, there is an 89% chance that your breathing is functional. All rodeo riders should have a BOLT score of greater than 25 seconds.
Absolutely, man. That's so cool and so easy for somebody to do, and sit down and just figure it out. Initially, like, where am I on the scale? Am I efficient or deficient in how I'm using my oxygen? I was going to ask you real quick. Oh, going back to the horse thing. Horses breathe efficiently. Animals breathe very efficiently because they, again, don't have all these outside stressors. But we tell kids at camps all the time, especially when they're so new and getting on, everything is firing. They usually black out the first, man, it could be 50 or 100 horses because lack of oxygen, because they're so nervous and wound up. They're allowing outside stressors to make them hold their breath and just squeeze. And then they get off and like, what happened? They just hit the ground. I don't know, So we are always telling them to really try and control that air. And those horses and bulls, they can feel a fly on their back. A fly lands on their back and they're twitching that thing off because of how sensitive they are and how they feel everything. So we tell guys, especially in the bareback riding or bull riding, there's no disconnect from you to the animal. You are going straight leg onto animal's back. With these arteries that run through our body, two big arteries being right there around the thighs and the underside of your legs. If you don't think that horse can feel how amped up you are or how calm you are, you're severely mistaken. They are so intuitive. They are so smart. They are feeding off of what you are essentially putting into them at that point. So my goal for these guys, and especially when I came back to the sport, was to get myself as calm as I could and sit down. And it was crazy because I would be getting on some horses that I knew were a pain in the ass in the buck and shoot. We're going to try me, be a dick in there, try and lean on me and test me. The calmer I was, the calmer they were. And they'd be, and the big thing with horses is if they're sitting there and they're licking their lips, just standing there, that's their brain just thinking they're okay, they're good to go, they're content with where they are. And that was always my goal, was to get that horse licking his lips before I started messing with him. And I'd love on him and I'd pet on him and I'd talk to him. And then when I'd sit on him, I'd take my control breaths, and you could watch his energy come into mine, which is the coolest thing for me. And, it's part of being a horseman, but in all reality, we're all just so connected through this, biologically, and we're
I think
all
that's
using air for
amazing.
the same thing. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Can I just go back? Okay, I absolutely think that's amazing that an animal can sense if there's a fly in their back, because it just goes to show that animal isn't living in its head. That animal has its attention dispersed throughout the body. But the rider is likely to get up on the animal, and the rider is living in its head. The rider isn't as connected with the body, with his or her body, as the animal is. Wouldn't it be wonderful for the rider, because you're talking about the rider and the animal becoming one, just like you would have, say, a Formula One racing driver, and the Formula One racing driver, things are moving so fast that they become one with the car, that they are driving their car with every cell of their body, riding a horse with every cell of your body. In other words, not just riding your horse with your attention stuck in your head, but delivering or distributing your attention throughout the body. Does that make sense? You're on the horse,
Yeah.
your
Yes,
attention is
absolutely.
dispersed right throughout the body, and that has a calming effect because now you're out of the thinking mind, but it gives you a tremendous degree of power as well. Or I was going to use the word solid, but strength
Oh yeah,
in terms of doing that.
absolutely. And it can all be, you can also, athletes that are listening, people that are listening now can you, this is like a golden ticket. Breath work is something that is the way that you get to connect your mind to your whole body instead of just being stuck in the rat race of your own head. And I used to be the worst about that. Just so busy minded, would cause me, I have no panic disorders or anxiety disorders, but I would get anxiety. And now when I start to get those feelings, it's really funny because personally I'm so aware of it. I'm like, you've been just breathing through your mouth for the last 5 minutes, dude. Take a breath through your nose, take some normal breaths. And I'll literally close my mouth. Those feelings are gone within 90 seconds. It's cool. I know, and it's taken a lot of practice, just like anything else, but it's really changed my life. And like one of my goals for 2023 when we started, and Paul can attest to this, was I wanted to be more present in what I was doing because of how my mind would race. I couldn't stay focused. I felt overwhelmed. And so I made it a goal and a priority to do breath work at least one time a day. And it has been incredible. It's part of my routine now. I do it every day. Even if I don't have time to lay down, I'll do it while I'm driving. Whatever it is, just something quick or working on the land, whatever I can do to just get a little practice in at it.
Great stuff. Can I just qualify a couple of things? When I hear the word breathwork, Doug, I'm always a little bit confused because normally when I think of breathwork, I'm thinking about hyperventilation, which is quite popular as a breathing technique. I'm going to just point a couple of things here. If we want to down regulate, and recovery is really, really important. Athletes train hard, they need to recover even harder again. How do you recover? How do you tell your brain that the body is safe? You spoke about the animals when they were feeling very comfortable that they were licking their lips. we also know that we are safe by virtue of the saliva in the mouth. And anybody can help to activate the rest and digest response very, very quickly. You're taking a very soft, gentle breath in through your nose and a really slow and relaxed, gentle breath out. It's the speed of your exhalation that is going to indicate, or at least it's the body telling the brain that you're safe. Because when we get stressed, we don't breathe out slow. When we get stressed, we breathe in fast, but we breathe out fast. It's not necessarily the speed of the breath in, but it's the speed of the breath out that's the key. So anytime that people are feeling a little bit off, their mind is racing, they're a little bit frustrated, just step back a little bit, tune in your breathing as you talked about, take a soft breath in through your nose and a really slow and relaxed and a gentle breath out. That's your body telling the brain that you're safe. You will know it by virtue of the increased watery saliva in the mouth, because your body now is ready for the digestion of food, and you will feel sleepy, the rest and digest response. Now, the breathing techniques that have got popular are the ones that you can see. It's the spectacle. It's the hyperventilation. Taking these full big breaths in and out and doing breath holds until you go blue. That's pretty extreme stuff. Mm-hmm. Think about breathing exercises going to a gym. You've got an array of different exercises that you can do in a gym. You can be doing very light work to moderate work to really high intensity sprint work. Hyperventilation in the breath world is akin to sprinting. And I would say to people, get your basics right first. Mm-hmm. So start off with the understanding of breathing in and out through your nose. And, bring in some breath holds, but I wouldn't necessarily be doing the hyperventilation beforehand. Now, I'm going to say this. There is a role for hyperventilation and people get good value out of it. But there's an even bigger role for getting your everyday breathing right.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you a question, and you pretty much just answered it there, but my question was going to be like, what is the key factor in this? Is it breathing through your nose? Is it the speed of your breath? Is it, like a breathing technique like box breathing, or is it diaphragmatic breathing and not, filling up your chest so much? Like, obviously those are all parts of it, but like, what is like the really, big takeaway that people can start with? And it sounds like your answer would be breathing in through your nose and a slow, controlled breath out is really kind of the main point here, right?
You pretty much said it all, Paul. I think the easiest thing for somebody to remember, if they were to get one thing, like I'll give you an example. Anytime that I'm working with a person who gets stressed, I always ask them, how do you breathe when you get stressed? And they will tell me, I breathe faster, I breathe harder, my mouth goes dry, I can feel my heart rate ramping up, I'm breathing with my upper chest. Okay, well, how then do you bring the body and mind into relaxation? Don't breathe fast, breathe slow. Don't breathe high, breathe low. Don't breathe hard, breathe light. So we use the acronym LSD. So L is for light. That's the biochemical dimension of breathing. Slow, S is for slow. So this is about down regulation. And D is for diaphragm or deep. But it's not about taking the full big breaths. Now, again, the animals that you're working with will be the best teachers in terms of breathing, because they will be breathing in and out through the nose. It will be driven by the diaphragm, and they have a ventilation that matches their metabolic needs. And you will find that the best animals, in terms of horses, they will be most efficient with their breathing, because the question that we have to ask is, human beings as well, what can we do for a given intensity, what intensity of exercise can we perform for a given level of ventilation? And a highly trained athlete will be able to run with relatively light breathing. But see, that's trainable. And that's where your everyday breathing, like I'd come back to this, Paul. If you have an individual breathing through an open mouth during sleep, there's already a problem, because that's also going to affect their breathing during their competition. It's your breathing doesn't automatically correct itself when you get up on the horse. How you breathe on the horse is determined by how you breathe off the horse. Mm-hmm. So we need to be looking at every day. It's the same as focus and concentration. That doesn't automatically correct itself when you get on the horse. Your ability to hold attention and to move simultaneously with time is that you're training this as your normal everyday life. Now, of course, I'm nearly 50 years of it. Well, I'm not nearly, I am 50. I didn't have the distractions of social media. I didn't have all of these feeds, because those are distraction tools. And if you have a youngster looking and scrolling, because when you think about scrolling on Instagram, it's a very superficial and it's not a deep learning. It's just, you're just scrolling. It's almost that you're just skimming the surface of everything. You're not training your brain then to hold focus, because it's all superficial. And if that child or that youngster is doing that for 2 to 3 hours per day, which they do be, they are practicing distraction. So they are practicing distraction all day long. They don't have the same capabilities of holding and controlling what's going on in the mind. And that is going to then impact their ability to stay focused during competition. It's not even during competition. It's your everyday life for the rest of your life. If we talk about a mental health pandemic coming down the tracks, it's on its way.
Man, that is absolutely mic drop. That was that was awesome. You got to
It's
be
a little
training.
convicting. I think I got some things to work on.
Dude, no, for real. I mean, that's the realest thing that has been said on this show in a minute. We're not doing the things that we need to be to produce the results we want for the most part, and it's because we're distracted. And there's all these things in our daily life, such as social media, such as TV. All of these things don't get us engaged all the way. We're engaged, but we're just flipping through mindlessly, right? We're not really thinking about what we're doing. That's why I love and I love, when I was a rodeo athlete, the skill work of it. I love getting on the practice versions of the bucking horses, that we call them a spur board, and really thinking and feeling and connecting my mind to my body. And my breathing was the one thing that, if I didn't control it, my mind and body were not connecting. And it's really even cooler to hear, you talk about, we say it in the gym all the time. You're not going to go out there and try and snatch your body weight the first day that you work out ever. You're going to work on the foundations and the principles that get you there. The same thing goes for breathing techniques. You start at zero, guys. Get a foundation, get a base. Don't go jump to the first sexy thing you see that you think this is the missing key, because the missing key is getting that foundation and base in whatever you do, and then building on that. So what if someone's never done any kind of breathing techniques, is, let's say, just your everyday person that wants to be fitter, works out 3 times a week, and rides horses for fun? What would be the first couple things you would have them do to start implementing better breathing techniques?
It would be breathing in and out through your nose, number one. Doing physical exercise with your mouth closed. Yes, at the start of the year, hunger is a bit stronger, but you have to bear in mind that this is a training load. You're causing your body to make adaptations. Now, when you are doing physical exercise with your mouth closed, don't push yourself to an intensity that you're hardly able to sustain nasal breathing. Let your nose determine the intensity. Challenge yourself. You feel air hunger, but if you continue then doing physical exercise with your mouth closed, your body makes adaptations, and it gets a lot easier then to do physical exercise with the mouth closed. You're becoming more efficient. Use all of your trainings and physical trainings, not just for the body, but also for the brain. You spoke about it when you got up in the rodeo during your practice sessions. That's not just practice for the physical body, but that's practice for your concentration. Can you do that with your absolute attention on doing what you're doing? Or are you simply going to the gym or getting up on the practice session and you're just simply going through the motions? Because going through the motions is bullshit. Going through the motions is a waste of time. If we want to do something, we have to give it our full and undivided attention. But you know what? There's a bigger story here, Doug. This isn't just about productivity and being more competitive and reaching our goals. This is about happiness. Because a distracted mind is not just going to take away from competition. A distracted mind with all of those thoughts, and a lot of them are negative and they're critical, and it's anxiety about the future, regrets over the past, and it's draining of us of energy, but more importantly, it doesn't make us happy. So there's a huge picture here. If we want to have some degree of happiness in this life, that this life is a bit softer, because life is a challenge. And it's not necessarily the situation that is causing the problem, but it is our reaction to the situation. And the one thing about your breathing is that you always have something to fall back on, regardless of what's happening on the outside. And I will tell you this, like, I've used this for the last 25 years for myself on a personal basis. If I was never to put one bit of instruction out there, it has absolutely given me a tremendous tool. And knowing that I have breathing to fall back, and like, I'll give you an example. I was brought into a TV studio, live national television, and it's put out to an audience of a few million people. They brought me to the studio at 12 o'clock. They left me sitting in a room till 5 p.m. that day, pretty much. And the whole thing was that I was to have a conversation with 4 individuals. And the 4 individuals, it was almost like antagonistic. It's specifically designed to put you under pressure to see how well you cope. I use breathing. And even when they brought me into the studio, they left me outside the door for 7 minutes. And I could feel my heart rate increasing. And I knew that what they were doing was intentionally doing this to stress me out so that when I went into the group of individuals, I would buckle under pressure because, of course, it makes good TV. Yeah. Not good for the individual, but it makes good TV.
No.
As my heart rate was increasing, I started slowing down my breathing. I put my critical mind aside. The door opened up and I went into those 4 individuals. And I was ready to go through a brick wall. Now, the interview went well. It was an hour and a half of intense questioning. I could never have done that 25 years ago. Now, that's a very, very simple thing. That's the ability to self-regulate, and that should be taught in schools. Because children and teenagers, we all meet situations in our life that whereby we're put under pressure. And we could be the most brightest individuals in the world. We might have all of the information, but the problem is that our mind will sabotage our performance. We have to know the tools to be able to control our state of mind. Now, what's more, I knew I had the tool going into that situation. And the knowing that I have something to fall back on gives me a comfort. Because I realize that, yes, if I do get stressed, I can automatically tap into that. But I would say this, don't wait for the critical situation before you start focusing on your breathing. Bring it into your everyday life. And then when you need it, it's there for you.
Absolutely. And it's free. You guys can practice this anywhere. You can do this
free.
all day. Yeah, it's free. Like you don't have to invest anything, and you get so much reward from it. And someone that is dealing with anxiety or a busy mind, or maybe not feeling healthy all the time, this could change everything for you. And as the future continues, as we see technology advance, I think there is a huge increase in attention on holistic health, on getting away from big pharma and getting away from modern Western medicine. And breath work, I think, is going to be a huge part in leading the charge of diverting that and getting that separation. Where do you see breathing techniques and quote unquote breath work landing here in the future?
I see it as very basic tools that people will be able to draw upon. It's very slow, Doug. And I think the slowness is because of the fact that it's simple and it's free. It's difficult enough to scale it. Now, in saying that, I've seen a tremendous upsurge in awareness in the last 4 years. Like, I remember back in 2002, of course, I've been able to make a living from teaching this full time through my books and everything else. And, it's been a tremendous quality of life. But the last 4 years, it has absolutely propelled. So where do I see it? I would love to see the day that every child, every teen, corporate worker and athlete and every walk of life understood that you have something. And don't just think about breathing, that breathing means take a deep breath, or don't just think about breathing, that breathing is hyperventilation and long breath holds. We use about 26 different exercises with breathing, but more importantly is that we tweak the exercise according to the person that's in front of you. Now, I want awareness out there. And I put out an app last year. It's called Oxygen Advantage. I self-funded it. It cost $150,000, so it wasn't cheap, but I put it out there for free, and everything inside it is free. That app is basically my head on an app. You download the app, you put in it asks you for your bolt score, your readiness, or it asks you if you have panic disorder, if you have sleep issues, if you're a child, whatever you have, that app then will give you a sequence of breathing exercises tailored according to you. And, as we talked about earlier on, you understand physical exercise in the gym and you understand about tailoring exercise according to the individual, and breathing is that way, but the app does it. Now, people said from a business perspective, I'm mad. It's a crazy thing to do to put it out for free. This felt the right thing to do. And this draws me back to 25 years ago or 24 years ago. I had a good instinct to go into breathing and it worked out for me. And if we can listen to our gut more often than not, you have an overwhelming sense that this is the right thing to do. Now, if you were to sit there and break it down logically, we can come up with any idea and say it's the wrong thing to do, but forget about the logic. Think about the gut, and that's why we put it out there for free.
Man, I love that. It's only going to bring it in front of more people who are then going to become more interested and see the results or the benefit initially. And I think that would only further their interest in what they're doing and all that. Did I just have bubbles on my screen? Did you see that, Paul? There was like bubbles on my screen. It was weird. I don't know. Sorry, back on track. Patrick, before we wrap this up, I ask every single guest we have on this show this question. What's the legacy that you want to leave behind when this is all over?
Well, I think I want to make some impact on breathing in this modern world of ours, and to bring it to the people in a language that's that's communicated, that people understand that there's something in it for them. That's what I want my legacy to be.
I love that, man. You are definitely on track for that. Just the first half of the book that I've read, I always get into these kind of books and worry, because if it gets too sciencey, or these words get quote unquote too big, I get really uninterested very quickly. And I haven't had that one time with your book. Even in the chapter 2, that it was kind of heavy on the respiratory system, you were explaining the actual science of how our respiratory system works. I got through all of that no problem and enjoyed and understood everything after it. And I think that's the biggest thing that people need these days. Let's keep it simple for them. And you're doing an incredible job of that. We do the same thing on the training side. We could blurt off all these words that we learned in our certifications and sound like the most professional coaches everywhere. But at the end of the day, the only people that sounds good to is the other coaches in the world, not the people that are trying to work out and understand what the hell we're trying to say, right? So I think that's an incredible thing, and you're doing an incredible job, Patrick. We really appreciate you being on the show. Where can people find out more about the Oxygen Advantage? I actually just downloaded the app as you were talking about it. But the app, the teachings that you're doing, and maybe follow you on social medias, what do you have for that?
Yeah, so we have websites, oxygenadvantage.com. We have social media, of course, Instagram and YouTube, and there's a lot of free resources out there as well. So, yeah, and I would say to people, start straight away, Think about first of all, think about the nose. Your mouth doesn't do anything in terms of breathing. Your mouth is a hole. Air comes straight down your throat into your lungs, and your nose does all the work.
Easy enough. Y'all get started. Thank you again, Patrick. Make sure you guys check him out. Check out Oxygen Advantage. The website and the book as well is incredible. We've got to thank our sponsors really quickly. Beastmaster Rodeo, been with us since day one. You can check out all of their gear at beastmasterrodeo.com. Use our discount code Champion Living, all one word, going to be uppercased. And Hui Brands, check them out at getyourhui.com. And again, our discount code Champion Living, all one word, is going to be case sensitive there. All uppercase, going to save you 10% on all of Hui's gear. Guys, until next time, we'll catch you later.